Three, two, one, and here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is King Wabi, and welcome to the special Valentine's Day edition of Crypto World Radio. I host these spaces pretty much every day. And as far as the time is concerned, that's all determined by any time zone differences and, of course, comfortability with any of our guests. We do try to accommodate around their schedule here on Crypto World Radio. And just as a reminder, if you're not able to stick through the entire space, this space will be uploaded onto our YouTube channel in about 5 to 10 minutes after the space is concluded. And also, if you're new here to our spaces and you enjoy crypto specific content, feel free to follow us here at Because Bitcoin. We host 3 live shows Monday through Friday. We have Market Check and Market Talk, and those shows are more focused on macroeconomic news, such as today's CPI data, for example. We covered that. And then we have Market Talk, which covers more U.S. equities and emerging markets. And then myself with crypto-specific content, where we host anyone from the VC space, anyone from the dev space, any founders as well, and also some individuals from the trading community, such as Trader NJ, Trader XO, and also some more broader people, such as Dr. Jeff Ross, that manages a traditional a hedge fund that also has some digital asset exposure. With that being said, also feel free to check out our pinned tweet on Because Bitcoin and check out our sponsor Bing X. If you enjoy trading spot equities and spot crypto, feel free to check that out. There's some prizes there that you can win. And also, if you want to join our Discord, it's completely free, but we do offer some premium channels, such as Nansen, which is coming up exclusively. And we also have some things such as High Block. Without further ado, I want to introduce Trader NJ to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your Tuesday to come up and talk some shop. Just a little bit of background from you guys. I ran into NJ back during the bull market, and a little profile by the name of Crypto Wizard would always shout him out. So, I've been tuning into his content throughout the last year and a half or so, and always a good-spirited individual, regardless of what happens in the market. And that's what we would like to have here. We like to have individuals that just like to have fun and they're enjoyers. So without further ado, Trader and Jay, God bless you. Thank you so much for coming on today. How are you doing, my man?
Oh, thank you very much for the lovely intro. I really appreciate that. I'm doing all right. How are you doing? How's everybody doing? I hope everybody's doing good. The market has been giving us some relief over the last couple of weeks, and I know that a majority of Twitter has capitalized on it. So it's good. It's good. You get some nice vibes in the space when the market is a bit green. It's nice to see.
Yeah, man, I'm doing fantastic. Honestly, can't complain. Received a little Valentine's Day gift from my buddies over at Blur. So can't
Oh dear.
complain. Can't
Oh
complain at
dear.
all, dude. Can't complain at all after you had a filet mignon sandwich with some nice fries and a mango smoothie. I can't complain at all, man. So NJ, a little thing that I like to do on here whenever we have these one-on-one interviews and discussions is kind of get to know the individual before more broader market discussion. So first off, man, how did you come across the space, man?
Good question. Good question. So for those of you who are new to my profile, I'm Trader NJ. I started in crypto in 2017, and the way it worked for me was, I'm an IT engineer, and I used to work in systems. I spent most of my time studying networking. I spent most of my time working within tech. Crypto was a very bizarre experiment for me. And I actually got into crypto. It was quite random. I was just online one night, going through different forums, going through different Reddit pages, and I bumped across a lending platform. It wasn't quite BitConnect. It was a different one. But after running into that lending platform, I saw how much money people made, and I couldn't believe it. I didn't think it was real. So, I wanted to follow the steps to see what people do to buy Bitcoin, to buy cryptocurrency, and then trade it. And I came across Coinbase. So, like everybody else, I put my card onto Coinbase, and I sent money across from Coinbase to an exchange. And I bought one of these tokens, and I thought, all right, let me give this a shot. Let's see how it works. I wasn't familiar enough with trading. I wasn't familiar with anything, just that, I had read about crypto, and I read about it from a technical perspective and not a trading perspective. So I bought this token, this random token. It was to do with Kevin Hart and Ti, and by the end of the day, I was $60 up, or £60 up for me, and I couldn't believe it. I thought to myself, is this real? I've put money in this morning, and now I'm £60 up. So I immediately cashed out, and I thought, wow, this actually works. And from there, I started my journey studying crypto, studying every altcoin that I could find, finding pieces of news that worked, and I bumped along into the first person I ever met in the space, which was Trader XO. And for me, it was mind-boggling bumping into him, because I had finally met somebody who just seemed to be a step ahead of me, if not 10. And I had so many questions for him. And from there, my journey really kicked off. Right, obviously, you see what Trader XO has done today, and I've kind of tried my best to follow that journey from a crypto perspective, not more of a traditional market perspective, but strictly crypto. And 5 years later, or even six now, approaching six, here I am on your talk show talking crypto. So that's a bit about my background. Hopefully that works. If you've got any questions, feel free to at me.
That's beautiful, man. We all love XO. XO is a good friend of the show. And me and him have been talking for about a year now. Absolute menace when it comes to these markets, and a very humble individual. So it's good to get to know that broader Trader XO fam, and it's a pleasure to have you here, brother. So on the topic of you mentioning technology, me and you sort of started out the same way, being just absolute fans over this technology, right? Things like Dragon Chain, if you remember that, like, wow, Disney's going to have its own private blockchain, you know what I mean? And so here I thought, right, early 2018, as like CryptoKitties was blowing up, that eventually we'd be able to trade Disney NFTs, right? And then, come to show, it turns out that Dragon Chain used to be part of Disney as a private experiment of sorts. So I guess let's kind of rewind the clock a little bit to 2018, 2017. What were those first initial projects that just absolutely blew your mind and had you just wanting to do more research across the space?
Honestly, to be truthfully blunt with you, it wasn't actually the technology, you know? It was actually the concept of being able to make money based off what you're researching. Um, you know, a lot of people think that just because I have followers on Twitter, or because I have my own YouTube show, or because of the people that I hang around, that, I'm a really smart individual who really, really focuses heavily on trading nonstop all day, and all I do is spend time studying the markets. Yeah, 5 years later, I do. That is how I operate. I study the market all day. But I started off very normal. You got to think about it logically. I was a normal guy. I have a job, 9 to 5. I go to work at 9. I make sure I'm there on time. I've got a lunch break like everybody else. And then at the end of the day, I go home. Um, After 4 weeks, I get paid. And then whatever I get paid is whatever I have to sustain myself, or whatever ambitions I've got. So, like everybody else in the space, I was very intrigued to see what this new technology would allow in terms of financial, well-being, right? I started off speaking to my cousin, and we were talking about making our own company, or what would we need to invest in our own company? How would we get going? What would the steps be? We hashed out all these ideas. A week later, I found crypto, and I just glued into that. I got obsessed with crypto, mainly because I found it strange that a project could launch from zero, have no real sort of backing. It's just a few words on a piece of paper, technically, and millions of dollars would flow into this project. It made absolutely no sense. Even if you wanted to, when I was younger, to give you an example, right? I wanted my parents to help me out. I wanted to buy a house. I thought that was a really good idea. So I thought, okay, if mom and dad help me out with 10, 20 grand, I can then use that, put it on a deposit. And when the house is at the right limit, I'll sell the house and I'll give them their initials back. And then I'll use the profit to do the same thing again. But in crypto, it's not like that. In crypto, you can go from 0 to 100 really quickly and then back to 0 just as quick as you went to 100. And I found that fascinating. I found it fascinating. And the amount of people that I met who were like minded, who had the exact same goals, um, I realized that there was a community. And I realized as well that the reason that so many people weren't interested or keen on it was because they were scared. That's the concept of technology. Technology has increased so much in the last 30 years that people get really scared when they're talking about Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. You talk to people who are quite well educated and you talk to them about Bitcoin, and the first thing that they say is, no, I'm not really into that. I don't really do any of that stuff, you know? But I wasn't afraid because I understand networks and I understand systems and I understand that it's very alien, and people are usually afraid of things that they don't understand. When you don't know how to ask questions, it becomes very difficult to thrive or operate in your space. And I still struggle with that today. I'm still on my journey. I'm still growing. I'm only 5, 6 years in. I'm still quite a young buck, if you think about it. I'm still struggling to ask the right questions and to figure out what the next step is. It's never about the answer. It's always about the question. And if you learn how to ask the right question, suddenly you find yourself on a really, really crazy adventure. And that's how it worked out for me in crypto. So there were projects. I started off by looking at sectors. um, my favorite sectors happen to be the degen sectors. How ironic is that? Trader NJ, somebody who focuses on Bitcoin and the S&P and the macro markets, but I'm talking about degen. But that was what got me into crypto, and that's what gets a lot of people into crypto. And it's important to narrate that because it's all part of your journey and how you build and how you mature. It was the lending platforms. I found it baffling. I found it bizarre that you could put $100 in, and then the lending platform goes live, and suddenly your $100 is now worth 2,000. How does that work? I was curious and I was keen to understand how that worked. And then I started looking at other altcoins, things that had real use cases, things that were competing against Bitcoin, things that were competing against Ethereum. And I wanted to understand the bigger picture more. So what I did was I started following the story. And I thought to myself, well, how does money work? How does my pounds work? What about when I get paid? Where does that come from? Oh, it comes from my company. How does my company give me that money? They pay it to my bank account. Where do they get that money from? Oh, well, my company offers a service. So it has a product. And that product is what they sell in order to make profit. And when they make profit, they use part of that profit to pay out all of their staff. And I started using that same concept in crypto as well. I thought to myself, well, all right, you've got the bigger markets, the bigger players, and then you've got the smaller markets, and then you have crypto. So follow the money, follow the narrative. And I realized that, you know, the concept of Bitcoin, the experiment of Bitcoin itself was essentially a payment mechanism, being able to transfer money from me to you, from one place of the world to the other place of the world, as quick as possible. And you have complete control over it. There's no middleman. All right. And then Ethereum came along and said, well, you know what? We can do what Bitcoin can do, but we can do it faster. And then going from there,
And
sorry about that. Going from there, I realized that other projects were launching, and now there was a competitiveness in the market. There was, well, all right, if Bitcoin can operate at that speed and it can handle this many transactions, and Ethereum can handle this many transactions, well, I'll tell you what, I'll launch my own coin and I'll hire a bunch of devs that can make this token operate faster, less fees when the network is busy. It started getting complicated, but in reality, when you zoom out, crypto isn't at that level where it's complicated yet. We're quite a bit away from it. We're still printing millionaires over and over again. Each cycle, we're still printing so much that it shows you how early we are. And what I realized on my journey in the crypto space was it wasn't so much about the technology growth. We're going to grow regardless, right? Once you start that snowball's going to carry on growing and growing and growing. The hill only goes lower and lower, right? The only time we're going to start flattening out is when too much money has been put in the space. That's just my opinion, you know? And projects are going to keep launching, and we're still going to have cycles until further notice. and we're still going to have new ecosystems. We're still going to have the same competitiveness. One chain is going to launch and say, I can do this faster. Another chain is going to launch and say, well, I can do this with more security. Another chain is going to launch and say, well, I can do both. And on top of doing both, I can add this third thing. So the technologies aren't going to stop. The competitiveness is going to increase, you know. But going back to your original question, that's what got me into crypto. It was the fact that that competitiveness was there. You don't have that anymore in the traditional markets. Look, I'll give you an example. Think about the boom of the internet. All right, and I'm speaking to everybody else here in the chat. Anybody who can relate to me in terms of the normality of a normal guy who just jumped into crypto. Think about the tech bubble, right, where we had the internet going crazy. You could have opened a online store that sold anything. What have I got here on my desk? A piece of paper. You could have sold paper, right? And you would have made millions just because you were doing it through e-commerce, because e-commerce was the narrative of that time. That was the generational difference between the generation before the 90s and the generation that was growing up in the 90s. And now you fast forward 20 years later, 30 years later, we have the same thing happening in crypto where projects want an opportunity to shine. The middle class man or woman or everything in between, they want an opportunity to shine. And this space has given that, you know, and I still think it's giving it. So that's what really got me into crypto. And I'm sorry I took the long way round, but, you know, I thought I might as well, given that everybody's tuned in to listen to me waffle.
It's all good, man. Take all the time that you need. We're really receptive to individuals that like to give short and concise answers, and we're also appreciative of those that like to give more longer, thorough answers. And I appreciate that, brother. One of the things that you had mentioned was, that you're into the degen side, but also that you keep focus on where the money goes, right? And back during those times, 2018, 2019, a good like startling statistic was all this Ethereum that was being locked up in DeFi, right? You had that initial website, I think it's DeFi Pulse, right? And right around that time, people were like, oh man, Ethereum's not going to go anywhere. All the ICOs dumped it. But then at the same time, there was all this ETH that was being locked up. And then you saw like the Uniswap grant, this other exchange, 1inch, being funded privately, and all these exciting developments, right? And also Thorchain and also AVAX, other things like that. And so I thought, like, wow, slowly but surely, the narrative that I was hearing when I first got into the space is starting to come true, right? And if I compare that time to now, it's sort of falling into more of like the GameFi space, right? So you have entire entities such as like Ice T Labs focusing on that. You have Illuvium building out a AAA game. You also have Katana building out the AAA game, and you also see like VC money pour into it, right? I'm not going to mention any names, but some really reputable names are backing up like platforms that are going to be hosts of these specific markets, right? So what are you currently seeing right now as far as like any narratives are concerned? Because you also have blockchain modularity with things like Saga and Celestia and Fuel Labs. I want to know from you, brother, the experience that you've tailored to your movements in the markets. What are you currently seeing now for the next couple of
Okay,
years?
for sure, for sure. But before I answer that, I just want to make sure that I am engaging and in tune with the audience. I could sit here and talk about different technologies and confuse people that are here, but that's not where I want to start. What I want to start with is how I think it works, right? So I mentioned earlier on, I mentioned about the e-commerce example that I mentioned with the paper, right? Something really simple. You buy paper, sell paper, and as long as you're doing it online at the right time, you're going to make money, right? Now, if you do it, the space is too competitive. You're probably not even going to get seen, not without the right investment or the right VCs, not to mention any names, or the right people pushing your narrative for you. So for me, it's all about timing. Everything in this space revolves around time. Okay. And the market, for me, as unorthodox as it is, it operates in cycles. you have the up cycle, you have the down cycle, and then you have the in-between phase where it's gray, where the only people who really make money are people who can actually trade the market. Now, when you have the up cycle, it doesn't really matter which direction you want to go in. All that matters is that you're aware that money is pouring into the market. Now, this is a bit controversial, so bear with me. You're going to have to stay with me for all of those who are tuning in now. But say, for instance, we're having an upcycle, all right? And we start from the very beginning. We've got Bitcoin, we've got Ethereum, all right? Now, what's going to happen is you're going to get a bunch of developers that are all over the world, and they're going to say, all right, do you know what? I've seen Ethereum. Ethereum's gone from 0 to 500 billion market cap. Do you know what? I need to capitalize. In fact, I think we can do this better. So what they do is they create their new chain. Now, because we're in the upcycle, all right, and I'll use Polkadot as an example, all right? Now, I've got respect for Polkadot. I like what they've done. I like their ecosystem. I made good money trading their ecosystem in the last cycle. But, if we take Polkadot as an example, if Polkadot had launched this year, or if Polkadot had launched in the bear market, I'm inclined to make the opinion that it wouldn't have done as well as it did. Why is that? It's because money is no longer coming into the markets. Money's leaving the markets. We're in an environment now where cash is more prevalent than owning assets or crypto or anything from the top level down, you know? So for me, you've got all these ecosystems that are building. When suddenly someone comes along and says, well, hang on a second, I don't want to make a chain now that just combats ETH. I want to make something else. I want to bring something else from the traditional industry, and I want to bring it into cryptocurrency because cryptocurrency doesn't have this anymore. So do you know what? Let's focus on GameFi. Right? I've noticed that, a lot of people, they spend time on their PS5, they spend time on their PC, they spend time on their Game Boys. What if we found a way to incorporate the blockchain with that idea? And suddenly the competition evolves. You go from 2017, where you're talking about blockchains. All you're focused on is blockchains, Bitcoin that runs on this, Ethereum that runs on that. Oh, what about Matic? Matic is the new one. That's a layer 2. It's not a layer 1. Live in the future, don't live in the past. Let's all go over to Matic because Matic has the cheaper fees. But in reality, all that's happening is that the space is evolving, and all you've got to do is keep up with the story, and the space evolves, right? If I'll give you an example now. We've had this market rally now for 6 weeks. All right, the better part of 6 weeks. I've not really seen any projects being launched. I've not really seen any companies or projects coming out saying, oh, we've got really, really big technological advancements that are happening within our project and ecosystem that we're looking to launch in the next month. No, I don't see that happening. All I see happening is the market is giving us a relief bounce, right? And I'm not trying to deviate from your question. I am going to continue answering it. I'm going to get to the end of it. But I wanted to connect with the audience so that they know that I'm seeing it from their perspective too, rather than just throwing out a bunch of fancy words and saying, yeah, I worked with this and I did that and I did that and I think this is going to happen. I don't want it to be like that. I want it to be as real as possible. Now, again, to bring it back to what you were saying, what do you see, NJ, going forward? Well, what I see going forward is the technologies that we had in 2021 were vast compared to the ones we had in 2017. All right. And I think that in the next cycle, and I do believe that another cycle will come, feel free to ask me more about that in the next question. But I think that in the next cycle, we're going to expand on the narratives that we have now. We're going to expand on NFTs. We're going to expand on GameFi. We're going to expand on the new narratives that surfaced during the 2021 bull market. And where we're going to truly see competitiveness is going to be in those technologies that were revealed in 2017. So like you mentioned yourself, Bitcoin and Ethereum really, really got out of proportion during 2017. So to go and compete with them now, it's not going to be simple. It's not going to be easy. You need brilliant minds to compete with those kind of blockchains. But then if you're telling me you want to compete with layer 2s, if you've got the right team behind you and you're able to get the backing that's required, again, that's all down to timing. You need to prove that money's coming into the space, then you have a good chance, Now, with NFTs and GameFi, it's not quite like that yet. You know, I've not seen anyone come out and use NFTs for a verification purpose. I've not seen anyone email me saying, yo, you don't need your passport anymore. You can use an NFT for that now. I've not seen any of that stuff yet. So I'm expecting that stuff to come out in the next cycle as regulation comes into play too. All right. And with GameFi, well, that's a pretty easy one too, because I know a lot of people here. We've got over 100 people here, absolute legends. Some of you guys and girls might play PlayStation. All right, you play PlayStation. What do you play? You play what's that new game that Hogwarts? Hogwarts just came out, the new Harry Potter game. Now
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
you put
Oh yeah.
Hogwarts onto your PlayStation 5. You boot up your OLED TV, and then what are you expecting to see? An immersive experience. We don't have that yet in crypto. We don't have that Unreal Engine. We don't have that. And I mentioned this on your show the other day. Actually, I joined into your spaces, and that was what I wanted to ask the GameFi guys. It's all good building the next RuneScape. I hear you, but if you want to compete and if you want to be real, if you want to really go and get it, you need to be looking at the games that people play today. Me and my brothers, we play FIFA. Me and my brothers, we play Call of Duty. I haven't seen any competitors for that yet in the crypto space. So once money starts flowing into the market, and that is a skill within itself, that's where the competition lies. And it goes back to what I was saying about 20 minutes ago, where I was saying it's all about the right question. It's not about the answer. No one's going to tell you long this altcoin is going to go up 20% or 30%. Those are just ideas. But if you want to actually capitalize on gains from an altcoin, you've got to be looking, you've got to be asking those questions. Well, hang on a second. This game that I'm looking at here, it's pixelated. It claims it's the next Mario Kart, but I've played Mario Kart on my Nintendo Switch and it don't look nothing like Mario Kart. Okay, I might put a bit of money in, risk to reward. It's a trade, degen, fine, let's do it. But really and truly, is it gonna do what Mario Kart did? Mario Kart owned by Nintendo. Nintendo's a big corporation. Does this project, do the people behind this project have the legs to go and compete with the likes of a Japanese giant, Nintendo? Do you see where I'm coming from? I hope everybody's understanding what I'm saying.
I do, man. I think they should be focused on how to capture the attention of again, like your people playing FIFA and Call of Duty, and even gamers like myself. I like games like Devil May Cry, and more recently, God of War Ragnarok. And if anyone here has played God of War Ragnarok, you will see the breathtaking visuals of that game. I mean, you're going through Norse mythology here, right? You're going to Midgard, you're going to Vanaheim. It's this completely immersive experience where I believe that the end user isn't even going to know that they're interacting with blockchain technology. And I believe the Aptos CEO Mo Sheik, he was mentioning that. And NJ, before we start talking about the next cycle, I wanted to know your opinion about a new user into crypto using Twitter Spaces as a means of alpha navigating around the market, right? And I've alluded this fact to Trader XO. Over the last 2 days, there have been many, many, many spaces from industry giants. You've had Matic, you've had Aptos, you even had like Arbitrum do these Twitter spaces, and they're so low key that you wouldn't have ever known that they're even being done. Because again, they don't promote their pages. If you're in the industry, you know. So I wanted to know your take for those individuals that are going to come within the next year and a half. Do you think they're going to have a better way of navigating the space compared to us, where all we had was YouTube, Reddit, and maybe CT, depending on what area you were in, because there was a portion of us that was like in Cryptopia and things of that nature. And I believe now with Twitter Spaces, it's a lot easier for the individual to navigate ecosystems, right? Again, you have Arbitrum, Optimism, Aptos, even various ecosystems built on Cosmos, right? Like Thorchain, they're hosting their Twitter spaces, right? So instead of saying, going on some like random YouTube channel, right, from someone that is like, I have found the next 1000x gem, you can just hear it directly from the people,
Yeah, I
from
mean,
the people that are building the product.
yeah, for sure. Look, I mean, Twitter Spaces is something that's relatively new. It's only been around for a little while. It clearly does look like the next step. Obviously, you've got other platforms as well, but really and truly, I mean, again, it goes back to what I was saying when you've got the market cycles, you've got the up cycle, you've got the down cycle. During the up cycle, what is it? The question that you've got to ask is, what is it that makes the up cycle so aggressive? Well, you know, and I learned this from Trader SC. Trader SC is somebody I met through Trader XO, and I've learned an enormous amount from him. And it's only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to his knowledge. But big shout out to him and XO for helping me on my journey get to where I am today. So again, it goes back to that upcycle. Why is it that it's so aggressive? Well, let's just keep it real. People want to make money. Why do people want to make money? People want to make money because they want their time back. Okay, when you're working in an office, when you're working doing labor or wherever you're working, whatever it is that you do, your God's honest work kind of work, you're losing time. You've got the hour that you need to wake up in the morning to fresh yourself up. You've got the hour that you need to travel to work. Then you've got the actual shift. And then after the shift, you've got another hour to get back home, another hour to get down, wind down, get in your home clothes. And then whatever time you've got left, you spend that with your wife and your children or your family, your parents, whatever. People don't want to do that anymore. People hate that. Everybody I know hates that. Nobody likes that. Everybody wants their way out. It's not that they're specifically looking for yachts and watches and such, but they want their time back. And that's what crypto gives you if you play it correctly. Now, when the upcycle starts, what happens is in typical trading, when you see a big fat green candle, do you know what that does? That entices you. It says to you, it speaks to you, and it says, buy, buy. Trust me, bro. If you buy me, I'm going to go up another 10x. Some people, they buy altcoins, it goes up 4, 5x, and they still want another 10x. So what they do is these kind of people that we in the trading space, they're referred to as exit liquidity, just an inside joke. But these type of people, they tend to only come into the market when they see these big green candles. And when they see these big green candles and they come into the market, they come in abundance. In 2017, I remember Telegram groups used to only really be 4 or 5k people, and then the bigger projects used to have 20, 30k people. Now you go into Telegram groups, there's like 100,000 people there. You're thinking, where did all these people come from? And I think that in the next cycle, we may have 100 people here listening today, but once that upcycle really begins and people are looking for information, what happens is they reset themselves and they become sponges. They want more information. They're looking for the next altcoin to long. They're looking for the next project to buy because they know they can't make those gains from Bitcoin and ETH. Those gains have already been made. The people who took that risk in 2008, 2009, 2011, 2012, those are the people that are cashing out big from Bitcoin and Ethereum. But they're looking for the new shiny projects, the projects that launch with low market caps, projects that have room to grow, projects that have milestones to reach. They don't have to be as big as the other projects that are out there, but if you capitalize on it early, you're going to get the 100x you're looking for. And that's why you see the YouTube channels, the Twitter channels, the any platform, Twitch, whatever you want to call it, that's why they blow up so big, because when they come in abundance. So in regards to your question, yeah, I do think Twitter Spaces is a fantastic place to go and seek alpha. I do think YouTube is good. I do think CT is good, but you have to remember that they're all ideas. Everything that you see on a YouTube channel, everything that you see on Twitter, even when you're drawing support and resistance on a chart, it's all an idea. That's all it is. And there are some dudes out there who get really excited because they drew out a line at the top of the chart, they drew out a line at the bottom of the chart, price went from the top line to the bottom line, and suddenly they're in a good mood now. They've got the clout that they're looking for. And why are people attracted to them? Because it goes back to what I was saying. They made money from those candles going from the upper part to the lower part. And the money that they made, what does that give them back? Time. So of course, when the market is in that gray zone as it is right now, you're going to see less volume in terms of people, because you actually have to work for your money. You can't go on YouTube or you can't go on Spaces, you can't go on CT and expect people to say, long this altcoin is going to be the next 100x. We're not in that cycle. We're not in that stage of the cycle. That comes later on when euphoria hits. So, just to wrap it up there for that question, I do think that it is a fantastic place to learn crypto Twitter. I've learned a lot from there. Of course, my ideas are my own, the advice that I give out is majority of that is for myself. It's a place to log it for myself. But for those people who are interested in my life, in my experience, in my trading journey, you can use those, tweets that I put out or the videos that I put out. You can use that to help fuel your own ideas. Do you know what I mean? I'm hoping that makes sense anyway.
Makes perfect sense, brother. So, talking about cycles, let's follow up on that. At this current stage, what part of the cycle do you think we're in as far as crypto specific goes? Do you think that we find ourselves in an environment like late 2019 going into 2020 where we kind of have this pump after the yearly open and then retest the lows? Or do you think this is more of a longer dated part of the cycle like 2015 where it's mainly a crab type of year?
Fantastic question. Fantastic question. And before I answer that, I will let everybody know that regardless of what I say next, the market is going to do whatever it wants to do. Right. That's another thing that I learned from Trader SC. It was very difficult building that into my mentality. The market will do whatever it wants to do. Now, in terms of where I think we are in the market, we've already had the bull market. We've had that 2020 spike lower, and then from there we just carried on rallying up. We broke out towards 2021, and then 2021 was the famous bull market. All right, we had the exact same thing in 2017. 2016 could be compared, not exact for exact, but 2016 could be compared to 2020, where the low was put in and the market did start rallying. But it was 2017 that we started getting those big 1000x's, Stratis going from zero to where it went $40 or something like that. Lisk doing $0 to $40. Walton Chain going from zero to wherever it went to. Link is still relevant today. We can talk about that later on if we don't have to, but it's an example. There were very few altcoins in that 2017 cycle that survived. Now, this comes into my next point because we got to 2021 and the cycle repeated. 2016 and 2017 suddenly became 2020 and 2021. Oh, if you got into the COVID lows, GG, well done, well done. The market's been going up since. Now, for me, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced that we're anywhere near a bull market yet. And I'll give you my thoughts as to why. I'm not going to break it. I can't break it down into as much detail as my big brothers can, XO and SC, but I can give you my take on it. From the normal man's perspective. The normal man's perspective tells you very clearly, look, listen, we had to, when the COVID crash happened, the world was not ready for that. We weren't ready for a pandemic. God forbid we had zombies or aliens. We're not ready for that. We weren't ready for a little virus. Everybody started getting sick. And the only way that the world could really combat against that was to just give everyone money. That was the general consensus. Yo, you know what? We can't fix this. People can't go to work because they're going to get sick. People can't go anywhere because they're going to get sick. But if the people can't go out and people can't go to work, then no transport is being used, no services are being used, no products are being bought. Everybody's just at home. So what do we do then? We just push money into the market, give them as much money as they need to survive, and from there we'll see. Now the thing is, after you've bought groceries and toilet paper, you're still at home. You're not going on the bus or the train. You're not spending money on petrol. You don't even need to spend money on as many cigarettes because you're at home, you're chilling, you're good, you know? And what's happened is, as time has gone on, because of the amount of money they threw at people in 2020, we're now suffering those consequences as we go into 2022, 2023. So, the top, 2021 marked the top. And you can use the inflation story as a narrative, as one of the narratives to assist you in how you view the market. Now, let's take as an example the rate hikes that people were giving. Now, I don't want to use words that's going to confuse people. I know some of the people that are tuning in today are new to crypto, and I don't want to scare you. So don't worry if I use words like inflation, if I use words like rates. Don't worry about who the Fed are. You'll learn that as your journey progresses. But what you do need to figure out is, all right, Fed were giving all this money away for free in 2020. Who's going to pay that back, bro? You've got to pay that back. You were the one that were happy. You were super happy when you was taking money furlough, when you was getting checks coming to your house. But now we're in a situation where you've got to pay that back. Now, let's be realistic, right? If someone comes to me and says, yo, that 100K I gave you last year, I might need that back. In reality, you're just going to turn around and be like, bro, I don't even know who you are. I don't know about no 100K. Leave me alone. right? But the Fed are going to say, well, look, we're the Fed. We control the money that flows around the world. If we say you owe us this money, that means you owe us this money. So what they do is they attack you in a different way. What they say is, all right, do you know what? This guy's not just going to give me that lump sum up front. What they're going to do is they're going to buy cars and they're going to need fuel and they're going to need a place to live. They're going to need food, on a Friday night. They're going to want to go out with their families and buy some food from a restaurant, or they're going to want to buy a takeaway or something like that. Let's hit them there because that's where they're going to spend the money. All we have to do is increase those prices and that money will start flowing back into the system. Right? Now, when we're going back to rate hikes as an example, right, you got to think of it from a logical perspective. How does that affect you as a person? Forget about charts, forget about the fancy words that macro experts are using on Twitter. Just think about it for a second. How does it affect me as a person? Well, okay, I've got a mortgage to pay, I've got car finance to pay, I've got what other finances? Maybe I finance the TV, or maybe I bought something online that required financing. All right. Now in 2021, if you was to buy a car, let's say you've seen a nice Audi or BMW and you say, I want to buy this car. You go to the showroom, you've got a little deposit. You say to the person, oh, I'd like to buy this car. Very nice car. Person says, no problem. How would you like to pay? Oh, I'd like to finance it if that's all right. No problem. Let's go through your application and we'll give you a percentage that you pay on top as long as you pay monthly payments. Everybody in agreement with me there, right? Now, you pay for this car, the finance comes out to, I don't know, 4 or 5%, which is quite high for a car. But nonetheless, you've opted to take a loan. Therefore, you're going to have to pay this monthly fee. Makes sense. It's a fair give and take situation. Now, fast forward to 2023, you want to take a car on finance, it's going to cost you north of 25%. Imagine you buy a £10,000 car, you're now paying £2,500 on top of whatever agreement you've taken to pay for this car. We take the concept to a house. You are with your girlfriend and your girlfriend's pregnant. You need to buy a house. You're not in a position where you can say no. Irrespective of what the market is giving you, you got to buy a house, bro. Otherwise, your wife's going to beat you up. All right? You go to the mortgage lender and say, hi, Mr. Bank, I found a house that I really like. I'd like to buy this house. And the bank comes and says, all right, that's a nice £500,000 house you've chosen. But, the mortgage rates aren't going to be 1% anymore. It's going to be 6%. And suddenly you find yourself paying an absurd mortgage. And where does that money go? That money goes back to them. So that all that money that we pushed out in 2020, that's got to come back from somewhere. Now, how do we measure this? How do we measure this in order to ascertain where we are in a market cycle for cryptocurrency? Right? Because we're talking about traditional markets now. We're talking about things outside of cryptocurrency that only have an effect on cryptocurrency. So how do we measure it? Well, you've got your FOMC meetings every other month. You've got them, I don't know, 8 or 9 times in a year. You've got your CPI data prints, which everybody's familiar with now. So you use your CPI data prints to measure inflation, and you use the FOMC statements to measure how much they're going to increase these percentages by. These percentages that affect you as a person in your day-to-day life, right? So the Fed have been increasing the rates for the better part of 2022. They've continued to increase it. And, I think they increased it by 0.75% early on last January. And now, fast forward to February 2023, and I think the last increase that they had was 0.25%, a quarter of a percent. And, the main thing to consider here, and I'll give you one more example for everybody listening. Think about if you get £100 a month. All right, you get $100 or £100 or 100 whatever current euros, rupees, Lebanese lira, whatever it is. You get 100 of those a month. Now, I've told you publicly that I'm going to rob you every month. I'm going to take 0.7. I'm going to take 75% of that every month. So every month you get $100, I'm taking 75 of that. Now, after a couple months, I say, you know what? I'm going to let you be. I'm going to take $50 instead. Right? Couple months later, I say, do you know what? I'm not going to rob you as much as I used to rob you before. I'm going to take $25. And for me, the market's reacted to that. I still robbed you. You still got robbed, bro. Like, why are you getting excited? What's there to be happy about? The rates went up. Now, what are we expecting? Again, it goes back to what the right question is. So what question do you need to ask to get back to the bull market? You're on a journey back to the next bull market. You've got to ask the right question. So the question is, well, okay, Mr. Robber, um, what do I need for you to stop taking money from me? Okay, well, the Fed need to pause. All right. Now, once the Fed pause, that's not bullish because all that money that got robbed, that's gone. That's not coming back. Now, you say to the Fed, all right, well, this still doesn't really work for me. You've stopped taking money from me, and I'm grateful for that. But a couple of months has passed now. I still need to pay my mortgage, and I need to buy a house, and I need to buy a car, and I need to live my day-to-day life. So, how can we get back to the place where, my car finance is 1%? Because I don't want to buy a Nissan Micra. I don't want to buy that. I want to buy a Merc. I want to buy a Beamer. I want to buy a Porsche. You know what? If things are moving well, I want to buy a Lamborghini Urus. How do I get back to that? So the Fed say, look, when the time is right, when inflation is where we need to see inflation, that's when we'll start decreasing the rates. All right. Now, decreasing the rates, again, you've got to ask the right question. How do I sum all of this up? If you're listening to me right now and you're thinking, you know what, NJ's making a good point, but how do I get to all of this without saying all of the stuff that I said? What I give to you today, what you need to research is you need to research what a risk on environment is. Write this down if you're holding a pen and paper. Risk space on, and then underneath it, write risk space off. All right. And go and study what those two words mean and how they impact the market. And eventually, what you'll realize is that crypto, as beautiful as it is, as amazing as it is, as powerful and aggressive as it can be, right? I did mention you go from 0 to 100 quick, you go from 100 back to 0 even quicker. So, as amazing as this space is, it is a smaller part of a very big picture that had already existed before Satoshi, the team that created Satoshi, came and painted Bitcoin right in the far corner. And when you start seeing things like that, you start changing the way that you look at things. Hopefully that answers where we are. Well, actually, it didn't quite answer that. So where are we on the cycle? So where we are in the cycle right now, looping back to your question, is, like I said, we had a rate hike last month. All right. I think it was 10 days ago, to be honest. I think I covered it on my YouTube channel. We had a rate hike. All right. So we got robbed. Now, we're going to have to wait until the Fed pause. And not only are we going to have to wait till it pauses, but we're going to have to wait for them to reverse what they've done, because everyone is suffering. Everybody's suffering. And to finalize where I think we are in the market, we've got to remember as well that, when there is a bull market, you've got to look for the clues and the patterns. When there's a bull market, suddenly, mysteriously out of nowhere, the new layer 3 is coming out. Oh, we've got this project coming out. This one's shiny. This one's new. This one does something that Polkadot can't do or Solana can't do. This is a competitor to Matic or AVAX. This is the new AVAX. Suddenly, when the money starts flowing into the market, suddenly I'm hearing all about these new chains and these new tokens. Meme coins are popping out of nowhere. Everybody's got a new launch. Every other day, there's a new project being launched. All right. We're not seeing that right now. We're far from that. I've not seen that in the current bear market rally. All right. Now, where I think we are is I think we're at the halfway point. I think we just hit it. All right. We've had that 2022 bear market. Price dumped from 69K to the lows of 15K currently. All right. I'm not saying it can go lower, but I certainly think we can revisit that 15K low. All right. And we need to understand what the next question is. So the next question is to ask you to answer your question with another question is, all right, if we're not at the lows yet, if NJ is saying that we're not ready for another bull market yet, what do I need to see from a charting perspective? What does it look like? Well, go and look at 2019. Go and look when Bitcoin dumped to 3K. What did that look like? When Bitcoin dumped from 20,000 in 2018 to what was the lows made in 2018? I can't give you the exact number. But, sorry?
It's 3,100. It's 3,100, like just under 3,100.
Okay, well, yeah, look at that. Look at that. See where Bitcoin dumped from 20K to 3,100 and see what did price look like coming out of that dump. See how long it took. See how the charts unfolded. Try and investigate what was going on in crypto Twitter back in those days. If you're a crypto guy or a girl or everything in between, go and study what happened. What were people saying? The respected peers that you've got now, what were they saying in 2019, 2018? And you'll see that, look, we've had a very aggressive sell-off. Now is not the time to be a bear. I totally understand that. All right. But at the same time, has the market really given us something to be bullish about after everything that I've spoken about? Has it really given us something bullish to be about? Are you convinced if I gave you $1 million right now, any of you listening right now, if I gave you one bar and I said, this is yours, would you really be putting that into an altcoin right now? You know, I was long in altcoins like crazy in the bull market. I was long in meme coins. I made most of my money from Floki. All right. And that was a meme. What utility did it serve? None. It was a meme. It was a community driven project. But at the moment, there's no money in the market. Money's leaving the market. So what community are you looking for? We spoke and we ascertained, maybe half an hour ago that you have to wait for the money to flow into the market to get the abundance of numbers in terms of people wanting to commit, people wanting to risk, people wanting to spend. But you ain't got that right now. So what I'm just not convinced. I'm not convinced. So finally, to summarize, where I think we are in the market, we are just past that halfway point where we need more time. We need to range. All right. If Bitcoin hit 15K, I'm not going to tell you exactly where the top is for this bear market rally. It could be now, it could be 25K, it could be 28K, it could be 30K. I could give you many arguments for each, right? Because that's what trading is, building a case, making sure that your risk is managed. You've got every reason that you need to within your system to buy something or to sell something. If I gave you a million right now, would you long anything? No, man. No one who really knows what they're doing would, you know? So Bitcoin needs to range. Let's say the top is at 25K, just as an example, hypothetically speaking, sorry. Right? If the top is from 25K, then I want to see Bitcoin range from 15K to 25K until the better part of Q4 comes. All right, or Q3. I can't give you an exact date, but somewhere around this year, I want to see price having ranged for that period of time. And once I've seen that, going into 2024, I'll start looking to see, does it line up with everything that I spoke about earlier? Are the Fed pressing the brake pedal instead of releasing the accelerator? Do we have more people coming in? Do we have new money coming into the space? There are ways that you can measure that as well. There are charts that you can look at to identify whether or not the volume's coming in, the people are coming in, holders are coming in, people buying Bitcoin for the sake of buying Bitcoin and not for a range bound environment, people saying that they think Bitcoin's going to go to the moon, etc., etc. You've got to make sure all of it lines up. And I'll be looking for catalysts towards the end of the year, potentially 2024, the better part of 2024, first part anyway, where Bitcoin could give us reasons to start pushing, especially if we see new money coming in.
And Jay, and you just mentioned Floki, which is a product that I also benefited off of, and that pertains to the meme coins and community-driven stuff. Despite all things happening in the broader environment, what are some sectors within the market that particularly excites you? I know we had mentioned GameFi, but you also alluded to following where the money goes, and back in those days, it was DeFi that was catching my attention. So, what sectors in particular are you looking at now, or are you just mainly focused on what's happening in the overall environment as far as like money leaving the market and leaving out, and then you'll push that again, as you said, more towards 2024?
Okay, good question. Very good question. Now, if we take DeFi as an example, right? Let's use DeFi as an example. Why? The question I'm going to ask here is, and I'm asking it to myself, I'll answer it, but why is DeFi such a big deal? What made DeFi such a big deal? Well, all right, for the normal user, you're telling me that I can put $1,000, lock it up into this TVL, and then every month I'm going to get a yield on it, right? You're telling me that after I make my $1,000 back, I'm going to have 6 more months where I can continue withdrawing free money All I'm doing is locking up this money. And that was really the premise of DeFi. When you look at YFI and YFI2, all these ham tokens that came out, that was the consensus. The consensus was you put your money down, you stake it in a different way, and every month you get money. So, I hate to say this. I don't want to sound like a negative person or somebody who's being pessimistic, but really and truly, we've got to remember that people are here because of money. Most people are here. 99% of the average Joes that are here for the money. They're not here for the technology. The technology is going to grow regardless, because similar to the tech boom that we had in the 90s, the competition is what's going to drive developers to continue pushing the market. So in terms of what I'm looking at, I'm not looking at a specific sector. Let's take the meme sector as an example. I don't want I don't really care about memes that are launching, and I'm not particularly fussed with the narratives that they have. What I care about is, will a meme coin launch at the right time when there is actually a community there to help drive it? That's one. When I look at DeFi, I don't want to, that money system, it's a similar system that they used in the lending platforms in 2017. It's just a bit more refined because we have more available tools on the market to distribute all that money in a different way. So when you paint over what DeFi actually is, you come to see that it's a too good to be true scenario. Now, there is a place for that. Too good to be true scenarios exist. They exist all over. There is a place for it too, but that place is all to do with timing. So let's take NFTs as an example, right? Within NFTs, you've got different sectors. You've got rarity, you've got why the NFT was created, what you can do with the NFT. Maybe you've got an NFT that signifies a character that you can use in some game, or maybe you're going down the historical route where billionaires who bought the Mona Lisa, museums that hold these arts and that arts. You want to buy something that has historical value, like curio cards or rare pepes or something like that, where you want to hold these specifically because of the dates associated with them. Again, you're not going to make no money holding them now. You're only going to make money from them when the market tells you that you can make money from them, when money's entering the space. All right. Now, again, if we look at GameFi, I don't believe that any GameFi tokens that will be launching this year, maybe you'll have the odd exception, but I've got conviction when I speak. I don't think anything will launch this year that will go from 0 to 1000x, where people have chances to onboard, where people have time to trade, where people have time to hodl and accumulate, whilst the outer, broader daily lives that they have allow them to hold those positions. So for me, I'm looking at all sectors. All right, I wouldn't go looking for a new Floki now. I'd look for a new Floki when I see that there is an abundance of people in the space that have the potential, that have the opportunities to actually buy into a project. GameFi, yeah, the technology is pertinent. Of course, you're looking for the next big GameFi. If I told you tomorrow that there was a new GameFi token that was being launched that had the same dynamics as Devil May Cry, like you can actually play a game that was similar, sort of the echelons of Devil May Cry, or the new Hogwarts game, or Ragnarok, God of War, or whatever, you'd be jumping at that, right? But again, you could invest into it now and you'll be spending the better part of the year saying, yeah, I've got this low cap gem. It's this gem that I've got. It's not going to pump because there's no money coming into the market. Why should it pump? That's another great question. Why should it pump? Because I drew support and resistance? Because I'm shilling it with my 58,000 followers? Because I'm talking about it on YouTube? Because somebody like Box Mining or Superman or who else have we got? My Crypto and BitLord, just because BitBoy, sorry, just because they spoke about it, should I buy it? No. No, that's not due diligence. That's just word of mouth. And there is a place for that too. In the meme community, word of mouth helps you move, it helps you gain traction, but not in this market. So, really and truly, as a crypto person, right, you've got to be open and you've got to be active. If you jump onto if you jump onto CoinGecko and Coin Market Cap, you look at the top 100 coins, right? Learn a pinch, just a pinch about each one. Have a little notepad where you've got, what is the name of the project? What does the project do? What blockchain does it sit on? Why did this project get created? Also, on that list, put when was the project created. I guarantee you, most of the time, it's going to come up that they got launched in the bull cycle, whether it was 2017 or 2021. So that already tells you, it paints you a picture that, oh, narratives really only work when money is populating the market at an aggressive state. All right. So, I'm looking at multiple sectors, but really and truly, I can't really advise anyone. I could tell you as an example, right? Let me give you an example. Arbitrum. Everybody in this chat knows about Arbitrum. Everybody in this chat knows about what's it called? A0, Aleph 0. Everybody knows about that. Right. But the same way everybody knew about One Chain in 2018. One Chain, to give
One
you an
chain,
example.
bro.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
throwback.
yeah. I'm going there. I'm going
Oh
there, bro.
yeah, we're going deep in the trenches, brother.
Yeah, we're
Launching
doing it.
Aeon ICX, the Interoperability Alliance, bro. Remember that?
Exactly,
The
exactly. Look,
smart
Exo's
contract
here as well.
economy.
Exo's here as well, and I rode
Oh yeah.
ICX with him. We bought ICX at 25 cents, and that thing just kept going up. But you know, I asked the question: why is ICX not at $100 today? Why is it not at all-time highs right now? Because of the market conditions we're in. When the next cycle comes, yeah, look, I'm feeling you. I fully hear you when you're dropping threads on Arbitrum, and you're dropping threads on what's the trade that I took to the LRC. You're dropping threads on these new ETH killers, and you're dropping threads on these new GameFi killers. But in reality, my bro or sister or whatever you are, in reality, when the next cycle comes in, when that money starts pouring into the space, there's going to be the new Arbitrum killer. There's going to be the new Matic killer. There's going to be the new GameFi killer, the new NFTs, the new Oracle, the new privacy token. Yeah, it might have ZK rollups. It might have I don't know, give me something else that's privacy related, anything, just whatever you see active on Twitter right now. The reason it's active and nobody's talking about Icon anymore, like if we're in a bear market rally now and Icon was the biggest thing in 2017, I'm not really seeing anyone that I follow talk about it. I'm not seeing anyone talk about it on Twitter, but it was the biggest thing in 2017. Just like today, Arbitrum is, just like today, Matic is, just like today, Floki is. But in reality, when the next cycle comes and you've got all that money coming into the space, you're going to be looking for the new shiny objects, because you know why? We already made money on ICX. We already made money on this token and that token. One Chain launched in 2018. That's their fault. Just because they might have the tech, but if you don't have the market understanding behind it, then you've launched at the wrong time, my friend, and that's your fault. That's why you're now irrelevant. And I'm not in any projects. I love crypto projects, right? I live and breathe that. I love crypto. And in the next cycle, I'll be really honest with you. Yeah, I do like the projects that we have today. I can talk about several projects that I like today, but I'm not going to shield them here now. No, because when the next cycle comes, guess what? They're going to be dinosaur coins. Guess what? There's going to be a new ETH killer. Guess what? There's going to be a new Bitcoin, a new fake Bitcoin. There's going to be new meme tokens. There's going to be new communities. And do you know what? Most importantly, there's going to be a new, fresh wave of people that are new to cryptocurrency. You tell me now that you're launching One Chain now, as an example, right? And you're telling me that people coming into the space in 2024 who have never heard of crypto, who have never heard of Bitcoin and Ethereum, they're just new, they're coming into it now. They're going to go and study some coin from 2017 and they're going to be putting $500 in that. No chance. No chance. They're going to be looking for the next shiny thing. And do you know how I know that? Because in 2017, when I started in crypto, I heard of this project called BitConnect, and I saw all these people making money from it. This guy was broke, and now suddenly he's got some nice BMW. Whoa, from BitConnect. Is this the next Bitcoin? What is this? You know, I didn't look to put money in BitConnect. No way. That's already pumped. How did my man get his BMW? It's already pumped. So do you know what? Let me ask this. Let me Google this. What is the next BitConnect? Suddenly I come across this coin called Regal Coin. But you know what? I was a bit late on that. So Regal Coin pumped from $0 to $90. You know what? I've missed that. So suddenly I'm typing in Google now. I'm going on Facebook. I'm going on Reddit. What is the next Regal coin? And I see another coin that hasn't launched yet, and it's called Hextra. Now, Hextra wasn't as good as Regal Coin. It wasn't as big as BitConnect. Never will be. But in terms of an R to R perspective, and the fact that it had the shiny new coin narrative behind it, I put my money in that. And that is where my journey really kicked off. So, for everybody around at the moment, look, Wabi asked a fantastic question, right? Wabi said to me, "What are the next narratives you're looking at, NJ? What are you feeling?" But I had to answer it that way because I wanted to come on this show and show everybody the same way I show on my YouTube channel that I'm no different to you. I'm the same as you. I have the same goals as you, the same dreams as you. All right, I might be a little bit ahead in where I am in terms of achieving that, but I'm not different to you. So I want to keep it real. I do think that a lot of the altcoins that we have today, a lot of the cash tags that you see on Twitter today, come back in a year's time and they don't exist no more. Dinosaur tokens. And that's not what you need to be focused on. If you're in the bear market and you're obsessing yourself with price action because we're in a range bound market, you're doing it wrong, my friend. You're doing it wrong. Stick to Exo tells me this all the time. I always get a slap on the back of the head from him. He always says, NJ, stick to what you know. Why are you studying this and this and this to try and beg up to other people? Why don't you focus on what made you money in the first place? Why don't you focus on what actually made you get to where you are? Focus on your strengths. Your time will come. Timing. And I reiterated that several times over this podcast. It's all about timing. All about the timing. When market is in a down cycle, that's the time to research. When a market is in an up cycle, that's the time to get gambly. When the market is in an accumulation period, I need to use that time to make sure that I'm benefiting my strengths. When the market is in an upcycle, that's the time to be looking at new narratives. You see what I mean? It's all about time. Same thing for projects as well. If you're a project leader or if you're a project owner, you got to be thinking exactly the same. You got to be telling yourself, hold on a second. The investor's going to be thinking like this. Therefore, I need to adapt to the investor because the investor's the one that I'm taking money from. So how do I make the investor invest in me? Well, you got to wait for the right time. It's all about timing, you know? But yeah, I'm waffling a lot, I know.
Dude, keep it going, man. I'm loving this conversation, dude. You just keep dropping banger after banger after banger. And a little difference that I do see with some tokens versus the Dino coins of last cycle is that there's a little thing called rebrands, and more recently we had Elrond change it up to Multiverse X, something like that, and that's actually a name of a video game store by my area, which is crazy. And now you also have some of these meme coins, including DeFi and including GameFi. Do you think there's a probability that these might scam pump similar to what Neo did, right? Where in the bull market, Neo got just a little bit of that old traction it did, and then people hold their breath, saying, "Oh man, it's finally coming true. The smart economy is coming true." And then all it is just like a little macro complacency value shoulder where really all Neo did was kind of pivot and say, all right, let's launch this Flamingo finance thing and launch a bunch of other side projects. And Jay, if you remember, dude, Neo came right off the bat after they did that rebrand from Ant Shares, and they had all these ICOs that were gonna, build on top of Neo, and they all did their ICOs on Ethereum and not Neo, right? Remember TKY, the key, the
Well,
little
let me
on-chain?
jump into this. Let me jump
Go
into
ahead,
this
go ahead,
because
go ahead.
because I remember this. And I'm sorry, but this just adds to my point. This just fuels me even further because I was there when Neo launched, right? And I'll tell you what Neo is. Neo, the reason that Neo pumped, AntShares was launched during the bear market. AntShares was a big deal. Do you know why AntShares was a big deal? Because they were the Chinese Ethereum. That was the point. So if you rewind and go back, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes ago, I was telling you guys that, and girls, I was telling you all that the narrative hype is going to keep getting competitive, right? So in 2017, what was the competitiveness? And you can rewind this and quote me if you want, not you, Wabi, but just anyone listening. You rewind this and quote me. I said that the competitiveness in the space is what's growing, and that's going to force the technology to grow. All right. Now the competitiveness at the time in 2017, we had the likes of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all the tokens that were launching, the big ones that were doing big numbers, were coins that were really going after Ethereum. Ethereum has the ability to transaction this many transactions in one go. Oh, we can do it better. And now we had the concept of China making their own version of Ethereum. The amount of money, China's economy is doing all right. Like if you look at the yuan, they're doing way better than the pound, the euro, or the dollar. Dollar looks good on a chart, but it's not actually looking very good. Now the concept of a Chinese Ethereum, oh my God, of course you're going to have the pumponomics behind that. But again, go to 2018, go to 2019. Where's Neo now? Nowhere. So rebranding is an important feature. Yeah, it is, but it only works. Again, it goes back to that market cycle. It only works when the market tells you to. And that is how you grow in the space. That's how you become mature. You become mature in the space. I know guys, right, in my own circle here and there, not really in my circle no more, but they chat absolute nonsense. They say that they've been experienced, 5 years experience into the space. No, brother, no, no. You popped your cherry this year. You've been in the space for 5 years, but you've just popped your cherry. So your experience starts from now. It didn't start from 2017 or 2016 or whenever it is that you joined. Where you mature in the space is where you start realizing that there is a narrative behind crypto. Bitcoin is an experiment. The altcoins behind Bitcoin are all experiments, and they're all trying to compete with each other to become the best in their sectors and in their fields. Then you realize that there are periods of time when Bitcoin goes up, and when Bitcoin goes up, if the stars align, you get Ethereum going up, you get all the altcoins going up. All right, cool. And then you get a period of time where all the altcoins go down. Bitcoin and Ethereum are killing off. They're settling off. They're cooling off. The top's put in, the local top for that year or whatever has been put in, and you see a bear market. Now, it all comes back to timing, man. All comes back to timing. If Neo launched now, no one would care, bro. That's just my honest opinion. No one would care. You'd get the occasional nerd that has a couple million in their wallet saying, yeah, you got to focus on the tech. You've got to do this. And oh, bro, come on, man. Not even, man. I've got friends, Wabi, right? I've got friends who went from on the street with me 10 years ago to having luxury mansions in Dubai, and they're driving Lamborghinis and they've got watches. They're no different to me and you, right? All about the timing. If you bought Neo and you bought Neo, the Neo of today, whatever the layer 2 or layer 1, whatever layer 1 you want, or whatever layer 2 you want, if you bought that today, you're probably going to get shafted. But if you are patient with your money, and that's what the market does, the market always really wants you to spend. Market is always trying to convince you to put money in. But really and truly, it's all about putting in money in at the right time. Some people, right, they put money in and they don't have the balls, they don't have the whatever the girl version is to hold for a year, because the market isn't giving you that signal yet to put money in, because we're going to 100x or 200x. So they've got to firm it for the next year. Whilst we're in a range bound environment, many people in this bear market rally will not take profits. I know some people right now who are 10, 20x up, and you know what? They're not holding USD, they're holding that same token. And that will do a round robin. That's going to come all the way back down. And they're going to be confused. They're going to be like, well, hang on a second. This don't make sense. I thought crypto was financial freedom. What's going on? I put 2K into this coin. It's worth 20K now. Why is it not going to 200? Look at the speed it went to 20. I don't understand. Why wouldn't it go to 200? Because you're too obsessed with the narrative, my friend. You're too obsessed with the FA. When you need to do FA, the market will tell you now is the time to do FA. When the market has money coming in consistently, and every resistance level on Bitcoin becomes like I really don't know what the analogy I'm looking for is, but when every resistance on Bitcoin becomes weak as hell and it just blasting through, that's when you've got to start thinking, okay, you know what, I need to do some FA now. Now I need to see, does the global macro line up with this? Does Bitcoin line up with this? Do we have any catalysts for Bitcoin going into this, what I perceive might be the next cycle? Does Ethereum look good? Does Ethereum have any narrative that can potentially help support Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin and Ethereum work quite in sync, right? Bitcoin has the bigger market cap, but Ethereum has grown to a stage where it can also support Bitcoin. There are examples of periods of time where Ethereum goes up, and that's what's dragging Bitcoin up. So are there any catalysts for these top 2, top 3? And if you find those catalysts, then really and truly you can pick any narrative you want. If the bull market is confirmed, it doesn't matter what you're longing. for those of who put the effort in to actually study what they're putting money into, they're probably going to make more than the person who's just blindly gambling. But like I told you, I've seen it with my own eyes. People have come into the space, with no education, with no real financial background, and they've made absolute bucket loads of cash, and that's a good thing. I find that amazing. Do you ever like meet someone who works in a bank and think, oh, you're a proper prick, you are? In banks they operate in their own circles. In Wall Street they operate in their own circles. I know people who have nothing compared to what I've got, alhamdulillah, but because they work in finance, they think they're bad. They think that they know everything just because they got a job on a trading desk in finance where they make 1% of whatever it is they're trading, you know? But with crypto, you've got a chance to break into this field. You've got a chance to make your opinion, have your opinion heard, give your analysis, give your take on the market. And you know what? A lot of people here who don't have that financial education, they're smashing it. I don't have financial education. Floki did 800x. I didn't work in a bank. Floki did 800x. Do you know what I mean? I didn't work in a bank. SXP gave me a six-figure trade. I put money into SXP, cashed out six figures, bought myself a CLA. But I don't work in a bank. I'm just an Asian guy. I live with my mom, my dad. I'm going to live with them forever because I'm Asian. You know, I got sisters. I got a family. I live a normal life. I like playing some PS5 with my brother. I like smoking a spliff here and there. I pray 5 times a day. I'm not different to you. I'm not different to anybody else. I don't have that financial background. If I walked into a bank, they'd all look at me funny, but I don't care. Do you know what I mean? So going back to your question, it's not about the narrative for me, and it never will be. The narrative only takes place when the timing is correct. Look, you can't go and lift weights if your shoulder's broken. But you know what? When your shoulder's fixed and you're healed, and the doctor says, you know what, you're fully fit, go and lift some weights. If you're trying to lift weights while your back's all broken and you've got some bandage on your arm, you're going to hurt yourself even further. And that's my answer to your question. Hopefully that helps. I know I'm a little bit mad when I answer these questions, but please excuse me. I hope that it doesn't come across rude to anybody. And I'm speaking out of love. I want all of you guys and girls to make it. That's why I'm chatting like this. If I can do it, then why can't you?
That's passion, bro. That's what I call passion, man. I absolutely love this conversation, and I wanted to open it up to our broader audience. If anyone is down here in the audience and wants to ask Trader NJ any questions, give your statements, feel free to do so. Click that mic button to the bottom left, and I'll bring you up here. My name is Wabi. I host these spaces pretty much every day. And if you enjoy this crypto specific content, feel free to follow us here because Bitcoin. So NJ, man, dude, I would love to I would love to talk more about this with you, man, on your live stream if you would have me, and we can go even deeper into these topics. I absolutely love this, and I'm an individual that loves to get passionate when he talks about the market as well. And I want to thank you for your time for joining us, brother. I really do. And
No, 100,
you know,
100. And yeah, look, to be honest with you, bro, it would be an honor for me to have you on my show. I think that you are another passionate person. I did kind of refer to you in a way when I said those those people who put the time and effort when the market is starting to shine, that's when your FA is really going to work. All right. And you're somebody who, even in the bear market, you're studying your FA. You're focused on the next narrative. You're focused on the current narratives. You're looking at the technological growths within crypto, even through a bear market, through an accumulation period. So, there's not really a lot of people like that. And I even tweeted today to say, only 1% are going to make it, really make it, if you know what I mean. What I mean by make it is obviously financial freedom. You get your time back. It's not about how much you got in your back pocket. It's about how much time you've got. So you can have 50 million, 100 million, 100 billion or whatever. As long as you've got your time, you're waking up in the morning and you're dictating what you're doing with your day, that's what making it is. So, when I say only a small handful of people are going to make it, I refer to people that are studying, not people that are just trading. Oh man, the amount of people that are getting excited over longing and shorting, longing and shorting. All of these conversations are going to change. When this next bull market happens, I guarantee you, nobody's going to be talking about the Fed. Nobody's going to be talking about macro. They're going to be talking about meme coins. They're going to be talking about the next layer 2 project that's coming out, and they're not going to have a single clue how it operates. They're not going to have any idea why it's faster than Ethereum or why it's faster than this other layer 2. They're just going to look at it and think, bruh, the market cap looks sick, fam. Oh man, the white paper says it's going to be faster than Arbitrum. I'm going to have to buy this, bro. And that's what's going to happen. So for anybody who puts the work in, they're going to make it. If you're not going to put the work in, and if you can't even be patient, look, market is chilled, market is relaxed. Why aren't you playing FIFA? Go study something. You don't have to be this macro expert, and you don't have to be this trading guru. Yeah, look up to them. Yeah, use their ideas, use their teachings to help confluence what you're strong at. But like, stop begging it. Stop begging it. There are people on the space right now who are just non-stop with the charts and the charts, and they're trying to look for any pips that they can take, because we're not. It's just further evidence that we're not in the bull market. Otherwise, people would be buying and holding. Every morning you wake up, you go and sit on the bathroom, and you're 30% up. It's That's not what the space is currently giving. I don't believe anyone who tells me it is. But you're one of those people, Wabi, and I have a lot of respect for you, my friend. It's been good speaking to you. If anyone in the audience wants to ask me a question, then Gigi, ask me a question. I'll be happy to answer it. I don't really do that on my YouTube channel. So if you want to ask me a question here, now would be a good time to ask. I'll do my best to answer it with the best way I can. Even though I go in circles when I answer questions. I know I do, but it's just my personality and the way I approach things. But a big shout out to Because Bitcoin. Thank you for hosting me today, and it's a great show. I've seen the one recently with EXO on the show as well. They cover a lot of different parts of crypto that you're not really going to see. You know, when you go on YouTube and you type in, I don't know, like pick an altcoin. What altcoin was I looking at? LRC. Go on YouTube and type in Loopring crypto. You're going to see all these videos that come up that say the next 100x gem, the next this, the next that. But, you know, but nobody really goes into detail about what the actual sector is, what's going on within the sector. And that's what you guys do. So big up Because Bitcoin. Thank you for having me on. It's a real honor. And look out for Wabi joining my show soon.
Yeah, no problem, dude. What's crazy, dude, is that like one of our new viewers was commenting if I can bring in Loop Ring to a space. So I'll be doing that. And like people honestly underestimate how difficult it is to get in contact with these teams, because essentially you're getting them on record publicly and you're having a recorded file put on record. So even though this is quote unquote Web3, it still operates very much like corporate America. There's a big process to get someone featured, right? It's, getting on a Zoom call with like a representative, and then it's talking to their lead growth, and then it's talking to their dev, and then it's talking to their co-founder, and then that also includes doxing yourself. It's this whole big process, especially when you're relatively unknown. So big ups to those projects that like do take that initiative to conduct themselves professionally. And you also have that side where projects just want to be featured on your show for some clout, right? So I'll be trying my
No,
best
it's a good
with
show.
yeah.
Because Bitcoin is a good show to do that. If you want some clout, if you're a project leader and you want some good clout, you want some good recognition, then come on Because Bitcoin. I agree.
Thanks, dude. Thank you, man. Thank you. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to catch the entirety of the space that we just had with Trader NJ, you can catch it probably in like 2 or 3 hours on our YouTube channel. And the reason for that is because currently, right now, our producer is working overtime right now. Not only is he helping produce this show, but he's also going to help produce the show that we have in the next 15 minutes with Market Talk with Carter. And just as a reminder, we host 3 spaces on a daily basis, Monday through Friday. We have Market Check at 11 a.m. and then Market Talk at 4:15 p.m. And then we have my show, which covers more of the crypto-specific side of our content. And I don't really have a set time of when they're broadcasted here on Twitter Spaces, and that's simply because I enjoy tailoring to the time zone of any guest that I have, and I'm really flexible with anyone that wants to come on. So if anyone here knows anyone from the dev sector that's currently building on Ethereum, Solana, Avalanche, what have you, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always looking to onboard builders on the space, and also individuals like NJ who are truly one of a kind. Same thing with individuals like Trader XO. And before I wrap up the space, NJ, where can people find you?
Yeah, just a quick one, just a real quick one before I say that. Look, everybody who's listening, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to part of my story, and thank you for hearing my ideas and opinions. Don't take it as gospel. Just remember that I'm a person like you on my journey, and use whatever you can from that journey, from that story that you heard, from my opinions to help fuel yours. Don't make it exactly the same, because it never will be. Mine won't ever be the same as the people I look up to either. But I'm rooting for you, whoever you are listening to this, whichever country you're in. Remember what I said. If I can do it, you 100% can do it. Don't let any idiot influencer come and tell you that you can't. And lastly, you can catch me on my Twitter, TraderNJ1. You can catch me on YouTube at In It For The Tech. I know it's a very different name, but it is what it is. That's my YouTube channel. But mainly, if you just click on my Twitter profile, you'll be able to see everything that you see there. I've got a free Telegram channel. I've got my YouTube channel. I've got my Twitter. And yeah, you'll see me hovering about the space. I'm here and there. Cheers, everyone. Thank you so much again. And Wabi, I'll let you take it from here. Big up Because Bitcoin, and big up to all of you lot for joining in as well. Thank you very much.
Bro, thank you so much, man. God bless you. It's been an honor to host you here, man. And you and the other Gem Hunters crews, bro. You and XO, you and Big Capo, Biz. Hopefully Biz comes back. Polka Dot Brown, all those guys, bro. You guys are all legends. It's been an honor hosting you. And again, for our audience, I'll wrap it up here. You can catch a replay of the space in a couple of hours. And if you enjoy this crypto-specific content from Because Bitcoin, feel free to follow us and turn on bell notifications. I am not sure what time I will be hosting my space tomorrow, so I'll probably have an answer to that tomorrow morning or something like that. But anyways, we have our market talk space in about 12 minutes. So once again, thank you everyone for tuning in. And Trader NJ, thank you for taking the time out of your Tuesday to join me, brother. God bless you all, and take care.
The trading current is just math. It's just math. It has a 95.45% hit rate when we deviate outside of CP2 and CN2. All you had to do is recognize that 95% of the time when we get over here, under this blue line, we get some sort of mean reversion. So let's just assume you long right here. 95 out of 100 times, when I buy this, I'm gonna get some sort of bounce. It's just math. Look what would have happened as we move up. Look at the bounce that came after. And now look where we are. If you had just blindly followed the current, you take all emotions out of it, and you say, I'm going to trust the statisticians, you would have bought Dow Jones somewhere down here under 30,000. You know, depending on how you want to measure it from absolute top to bottom, 20% move. We also have multi-time frame alerts. You don't even have to be at your computer on TradingView. You can ping your phone. Now, the current has some really awesome features, and I would urge you guys to join our Discord to get access to it. We give it away for free as a tool to the community. It's just math. There's really no need to overcomplicate things, not even in the slightest.